July, 1518. A woman suddenly began dancing in the streets of Strasbourg. At first, nobody thought much of it. But hours passed, and she still couldn't stop. Witnesses watched as she danced through exhaustion, through pain, even through bleeding feet. Then something terrifying happened. Other people began dancing too. Within days, the streets were filled with crowds moving uncontrollably for hours at a time. Some screamed for help while their bodies continued dancing. Others reportedly collapsed dead from exhaustion. And according to historical accounts, the city may have accidentally made the outbreak even worse. More than 500 years later, nobody fully agrees on what caused one of the strangest mass events in human history. Because whatever happened in Strasbourg that summer spread like a plague. But the strangest part of this mystery wasn't the dancing itself. It was what the city decided to do next. Because according to historical records, authorities may have accidentally turned the outbreak into a nightmare. And even now, more than 500 years later, scientists still cannot fully explain what happened in Strasbourg that summer. The events began in the summer of 1518 in Strasbourg, a city within the Holy Roman Empire. At the time, life was already difficult for most people. Disease was common. Poverty was widespread. Famine and sickness haunted much of Europe. Fear shaped everyday life. And in deeply religious communities, many believed disasters were punishments sent by God. Then one morning, something bizarre happened. Historical records claim a woman known as Frau Trophia stepped into the street and began dancing violently. At first, witnesses thought she might simply be celebrating or behaving strangely. But hours passed, and she still didn't stop. She danced through exhaustion, through pain, through the summer heat. By nightfall, people reportedly watched in horror as she continued moving uncontrollably through the streets. According to historical accounts, the dancing continued for days. Her feet became swollen and bloody. Yet somehow, she kept dancing. And then the impossible happened. Others began joining her. Within days, the strange behavior spread across Strasbourg. More people began dancing uncontrollably in the streets. Then dozens. Then entire crowds. Historical reports claim some victims screamed for help while their bodies continued moving against their will. Witnesses described people collapsing from exhaustion, only to rise again and continue dancing. Panic spread throughout the city. Families desperately tried restraining loved ones. Priests organized prayers. Doctors searched for explanations. But nothing seemed to stop it. And as the number of dances grew, so did the deaths. Some reports claimed victims suffered heart attacks. Others collapsed from strokes or complete exhaustion after dancing for days without rest. Yet perhaps the strangest part of all, city authorities may have accidentally made the situation even worse. Because instead of stopping the dances, they encouraged them to continue. Desperate for answers, Strasbourg's leaders turned to local physicians for advice. But the explanation they received only deepened the nightmare. Doctors at the time believed the victims suffered from something called hot blood. According to medieval medicine, overheated blood caused uncontrollable movement and madness. And strangely, the doctors concluded the dancers should continue dancing until the illness finally left their bodies. So instead of quarantining the victims, the city encouraged them. Authorities cleared public spaces for dancing. Wooden stages were reportedly constructed. Musicians were even hired to play music for the afflicted crowds. The hope was simple: let the dancers exhaust the sickness naturally. But the plan backfired horribly. As music echoed through the streets, even more people began dancing. Panic consumed the city. Historical records describe entire groups moving uncontrollably for hours beneath the summer heat. Some witnesses believed they were watching a curse unfold in real time. Others feared demonic possession. And with each passing day, the death toll reportedly continued rising. Some accounts claimed dozens of people were dying every week from exhaustion and cardiac failure. The city had never seen anything like it. Nobody understood how a strange compulsion to dance had transformed into a mass catastrophe. But eventually, authorities realized they needed a different solution. As conditions worsened, religious leaders became convinced the plague was not physical, but spiritual. In the deeply religious world of 16th-century Europe, unexplained suffering was often seen as punishment from God or the work of dark supernatural forces. Many believed the dances had been cursed by Saint Vitus, a Christian saint associated with strange neurological disorders and uncontrollable movement. According to local beliefs, those who angered the saint could be condemned to dance endlessly in agony. Fear spread rapidly through Strasbourg. Citizens avoided the streets. Families locked themselves indoors. Church bells echoed across the city as prayers filled crowded cathedrals. Finally, authorities abandoned the musicians and public dancing areas altogether. Instead, the remaining victims were transported to a shrine in the mountains dedicated to Saint Vitus. Historical accounts claim the dancers were dressed in red shoes marked with holy symbols before religious ceremonies were performed over them. And strangely, after weeks of terror, the outbreak slowly began to fade. The dances gradually stopped. The streets became quiet again. But the mystery was far from over. Because even today, nobody truly knows what caused hundreds of people to dance uncontrollably through the streets of Strasbourg in 1518. Over the next 500 years, historians, scientists, and researchers attempted to solve the mystery of the dancing plague. But no explanation has ever fully answered every question. One of the most popular theories involves something called ergot poisoning. Ergot is a toxic mold that can grow on damp rye grain, a common food source in medieval Europe. When consumed, the poison can cause terrifying symptoms, hallucinations, muscle spasms, convulsions, and psychological disturbances. Some researchers believe contaminated bread may have triggered mass hysteria throughout Strasbourg. But many historians disagree with this explanation. Because victims reportedly danced uncontrollably for days or even weeks, something difficult to explain through poisoning alone. Others believe the outbreak was caused by extreme psychological stress. Life in 1518 was brutal. Disease, famine, poverty, and fear dominated everyday existence. Some experts think the people of Strasbourg experienced a form of mass psychogenic illness, sometimes called mass hysteria. A condition where fear and psychological trauma spread physically through groups of people. Similar events have happened throughout history. Entire schools experiencing mysterious illnesses. Communities reporting identical symptoms without clear medical causes. But even this theory leaves disturbing questions unanswered. Why dancing? Why Strasbourg? And how did hundreds of people seemingly lose control of their bodies at the same time? Today, the dancing plague of 1518 remains one of the strangest events ever recorded in human history. historians still debate how much of the original story was exaggerated over time. Some records conflict with one another. Others may have been influenced by fear, religion, or superstition. But one fact remains undeniable. Something terrifying happened in Strasbourg during the summer of 1518. Hundreds of people reportedly danced through the streets for days without explanation. Some collapsed from exhaustion. Some allegedly died. And nobody truly understood why. In the modern world, we often assume science can explain everything. Every illness. Every behavior. Every mystery. But events like the dancing plague remind us that human history is still filled with unanswered questions. Somewhere between medicine, psychology, religion, and fear, the truth behind the dancing plague may still be hidden. Lost beneath centuries of speculation and forgotten history. And perhaps the creepiest part of all is imagining what it must have looked like. Entire crowds dancing uncontrollably through medieval streets, while a terrified city watched helplessly, unable to stop them. The dancing plague of 1518 remains one of history's most disturbing unsolved mysteries. But what do you think really caused it? Mass hysteria? Poisoning? Religious fear? Or something we still don't understand even today? Let me know your theory in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, subscribe for more dark historical mysteries, unexplained events, and real stories stranger than fiction. Because sometimes, history hides things we may never fully explain.